All right, we are going to start chapter 8 in 1 Corinthians tonight. We made it through chapter 7. Chapter 7 was quite a long chapter. Now as we get to chapter 8, we're going to switch gears one more time. Chapter 7, Paul dealt with the question of the fact that these folks had questions about whether or not Christians should be celibate, or is it okay for husbands and wives to have sexual relations? Is it something that we should avoid, so on and so forth? So Paul dealt with that. He dealt with the fact that no, absolutely. If you're single and you can live a celibate life, by all means. But if you're married, you're perfectly fine. Just make sure that the person you married to is the one that you are doing all these things with. He talked about divorce. And the ideal is that once you're married, you stay together. But that doesn't always work out. So we talked about when is it permissible according to Scripture as a believer? When is it permissible to be remarried? And if your marriage was dissolved based upon adultery or an unbeliever abandoning a believer, that's okay. The believer is free to remarry. But also, I need you to remember, I had a conversation earlier this week, and the person told me that, I sat there and listened to all that, and that it was a part of their background. So sometimes when we deal with things, it may be part of your background. We may talk about abortion. Maybe that's a part of your story. We may talk about homosexuality. That may be a part of your story. We may talk about these things that are hot topics, but you got to remember, you read over in the book of Romans, where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. And anything that's going on as far as unbelief goes, before you're a believer, you have no other standard to live by. So even though we talk about these things, the ideal is once you're a believer and you're in these situations, that you would glorify God with the way you live your life. So as we get to chapter 8, before we jump into it, we're going to look at least the first 3 verses. We need to do a review of where we are. All right, this is Paul's letter to the church where? Corinth. And what do we know about Corinth?
Port city.
Is it port city? You said something? Trade center. What'd you say? Trade center. All right, so it's on an isthmus. You may know what an isthmus is. It's a little land bridge between two bigger pieces of land. So the idea was that little small area of a few miles, it was easier for a ship to pull in, unload, have the stuff carried to the other side, 1.5 miles, 2 miles to the other side, reload it on another ship, and then they continue on, as opposed to a dangerous trip around the bottom of what is modern day Greece. So what comes with a port city, trade, and people showing up from all over the world coming back and forth?
Sin City.
Yeah, Sin City, there you go. So Ephesus was the same way. Corinth is like this. Rome's the capital city, so it's all... So anywhere where you have a port, and anywhere that is along a trade route, you've got the whole world coming and going. Interestingly enough, if you ever look at ancient maps, there was a trade route that goes right through Israel. So if you're coming out of Africa up into the east or into Europe, you got to go through Israel. If you're in the east or you're in Europe and you're coming down into Africa to sell your stuff, you got to go through Israel. So that piece of real estate is not just a random piece of real estate. God put it there because the whole world was going to come back and forth through there so that, the world would know who he was and the grace he offers. So as far as Corinth goes, anything and everything, all different kinds of religions, all different kinds of pagan worship and temples and prostitution and idolatry. It's a double-edged sword. If you're going to be a missionary and you're going to share the gospel and you want the gospel to go out to the world, it's a good situation. But if you're going to live there and try to live a life that honors and glorifies God, you're putting yourself in a tough place to be. So this is what some of these questions that Paul is answering for these folks. So we looked when we started chapter 7 back in 2022 or whenever that was, that they had actually asked him different questions. We're getting to a different question as we begin chapter 8 from the celibacy and the sexual temptation and stuff that we talked about in chapter 7. Now, when we get to this topic, when we start reading, you're going to be, what? What has that got to do with me in 2026? What does this have to do? What is the point here? Well, I want you to understand something. We're going to read about food offered to idols, okay? That's the question that the Corinthians have asked Paul. This passage and this section that we're going to be in for the next few weeks is not about the idols, okay? There's a whole nother idea that Paul opens up here that is for us, okay? Now, what we have to do is we have to figure out what is the point that he's trying to make, and how does that apply to us now? Because when's the last time some of us went down and bought a idol burger from Zeus's Burgers or whatever it is? Now, yeah, if anybody in here has ever eaten something sacrificed to an idol, hopefully you're here and you're born again and you're out of that mess. But it's not common today. In first century Corinth, it's almost impossible to avoid, okay? So the reason they asked this question is because the whole world is coming and going through this little town. The pagan worship and the idolatry and all the different things that are happening there are so prevalent that it's hard to not come in contact with it some way, shape, or form. Now, in the first century, meat was not like it is today, okay? Today, if we want meat, we go down to Price Chopper and pay too much, or we go down to Walmart and still pay too much. But either way, we go, what is a pound of beef these days? $12? The cheapest kind. I don't know. What? All right, let's pray. I got to go to Price Chopper. Heavenly Father, yes. 10 pounds for $3? $3.49 a pound. Okay, but still, that's half of what you're going to get anywhere else, at least. That's not bad. Still, that's 10 pounds. That's still $34 for 10 pounds. That's 40 quarter pounders, man. That's less than $1 quarter pounder. All right. I know where I'm going after service. Anyway, so yeah, this is not something that we come in contact with too often. So let's read the first 3 verses, and then we will jump into this. And hopefully, what time do we got? 6:33. All right, y'all gonna have to listen fast tonight. So here we go. Starting in chapter 8, verse 1, 1 Corinthians, this is what Paul writes. Now concerning, I'm going to start over. This is what Paul writes to the Corinthians. Now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. This knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And if anyone imagines that he knows something, he does not yet know as he ought to know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by God. That sounds like a puzzle, don't it? All right. So, because we're probably not going to get any further than that, we'll just jump on in. So they had asked him, along with the celibacy thing, and are we allowed to have sex with our wives, and should we get married, and so on and so forth. They also asked him about this food, specifically meat, that is offered to idols. So he says, concerning the food offered to idols, we know that. Now, some versions have some quotation marks right here. Does anybody have a version with quotation marks after that? We know that, other than me. Nobody? Are y'all even looking? What version y'all got? New American Standard? New American Standard? Okay. Well, anyway, here's what we have to understand. You got ESV? You got quotation marks then. There you go.
I was trying to look something real quick.
So in the ESV, there are quotation marks. In some versions, there are quotation marks. In the older versions, there probably aren't. So here's why there are quotation marks in the newer versions and not necessarily some of the older versions. 400 years ago, when old King Jimmy was doing his thing, there was a lot less information that was available as far as the historical background and what's actually going on and so on and so forth. 400 years later, we have a lot more information, okay? And this is not 100% settled, but pretty much a lot of the theologians that you talk to today say that all of us possesses knowledge is a phrase that was not unique, but a phrase that was used a lot in Corinth. Okay, so if you come here more than once, what is a phrase that you're going to hear on a Sunday morning in here more than once? You're going to hear it practically every Sunday. Thank you very much. At least 4 people have got it. Thank you. It's not about you. Your life is not about you. It's about God. So it's not surprising for you to hear that when you're here. And if somebody comes up to you, you're one of the people that remembered it, somebody comes up to you and says, well, I heard you go to Leavenworth Baptist Church. What kind of message they preach over there? And you should go, well, they tell you it's not about you, it's about God. You're not just saying that, it's a quote that you have associated with this place, okay, which hopefully everybody's going to associate with this place. So that's what's going on here. All of us possesses knowledge. Now remember, where are they? Where is Corinth? What country? In Greece, okay? Athens is not that far away. The philosophy and the, oh, look at how smart I am is part of what they're into. Philosophers and quoting this one and who likes this one more than that one and yada, yada, yada. That's part of the society. So the idea of knowledge and, we all possess some kind of knowledge was something that they were commonly saying. So all of us possesses knowledge, is Paul saying, okay, this is what you guys like to say all the time, and it's true. We all have some level of knowledge. But you got to remember, going back to everything we've talked about up in these first 7 chapters, what happened to them when they gained knowledge, when they thought that they were smarter than the next person? or that they had studied more than, oh, I've studied more than, hold on, don't tell me, Benjamin. I've studied more than Benjamin, so I know more about how to put on compression socks than Benjamin does. Okay, but Benjamin probably knows more about, how to do plumbing than I do because he's done that kind of thing. So what? These folks would get puffed up with their knowledge. All right, so everybody has some form of knowledge. And he says, but knowledge puffs up. Here's what you got to understand. You're asking about sacrificing to idols, and is it okay to consume the food that has been part of that process? And he says, before I answer the question flat out, here's what you got to remember. I'm about to share some knowledge with you. You may be one of the more mature believers. You may be one of the folks that the less mature, the younger look up to. You may actually be dealing with people who struggle with this question. This knowledge and what I'm about to share, don't let it give you the big head. Don't get puffed up because you think you know this or you think you know that. That is not what anything is about when we're dealing with the church and with Christ and all this other stuff. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Love builds up. So if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're going to look down your nose at everybody else. But that's not what Christ did, and he knew it all. But if you're loving everybody in the room, you should be looking up at them because you're putting yourself below them. And you're trying to help them build their faith and trying to help them build whatever it is that God's doing in their life. That's what love does. So you ask this question, I'm going to give you an answer. But you should not hold this over somebody's head because you know and they don't. Oh, look, they're so immature. They're so this, they're so that, blah, blah, blah. He says, no, forget all that. If you've got this knowledge, the purpose is for you to love others. And if you see this happening, you are able to share with them and to guide them and to help them along the way to figure this out. You need to be able to share in such a way that this other person doesn't feel belittled, but they feel lifted up. That's what he's saying. He says, you're asking about this. I'm going to answer it. You guys are proud of your knowledge, but that's just pride. It'll puff you up. But love builds up. If you're loving one another, if you're loving the way God tells you to love, if you're loving your neighbor, you're not looking to destroy them or to inflict something on them. You're looking to lift them up and help them to know God better, to help them to be able to accomplish honoring and glorifying Him better. Okay? That is what love does. So he says, I'm going to give you some knowledge, but you got to make sure you're using love more than you are knowledge. Look at what he says in verse 2. Just to make sure they understand, he says, if anyone imagines that he knows something. So if I tell you this secret, and you think you know the deal, and you know it all, and you know this, and you know that, if that's what you think, if anyone imagines that he knows something, he does not yet know as he ought to know. What is he saying? If you think you know something now, if you think you know something, you think you got this much knowledge, you don't know anything the way you ought to. What is he saying? why can't we approach that? Why is that impossible for us to know? What's the disconnect between what we are able to understand now and what we hopefully will know in the future when we get there? And I say hopefully because
Because we live in a we're finite body, and not just finite body, finite mind as well. So not just finite body, but because we are mortal,
uh-huh.
we could not accumulate enough knowledge over the course of our time to even come close to approaching that, if it was even possible to ever approach that level of knowledge to begin with, which it isn't.
So if we're able to know everything we can know, okay? No, we can't understand infinity or an infinite God, or we cannot wrap our brains around who God is. But we have a capacity to a certain point. Now, if we, hold on, I can't never remember this guy's name. Who's the smart guy? Stephen Hawking, that's the guy. He passed away, right? Yeah. So Stephen Hawking was, he was, whatever happened to his body, he was in that wheelchair, but his brain, who in the world could have more knowledge than that guy? Man, he could tell you the square root of zero. I can too, zero. But anyway, he had all this knowledge in his brain, and he knew what he thought was the explanation to all this, that, and, all blah, 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 blah. Well, he never came to the knowledge of anything that has to do with the Holy Spirit and spiritual things, unless something happened to him at the end that we never knew about. So even with all his knowledge, he had no knowledge of spiritual things. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like what you're saying, and maybe what this passage is saying, is knowledge is dead without application.
Well, it's not just that. It's about the fact that even, and I tell you, here's why. Here's why we can never know exactly the way we are going to know at one point. It's 3 letters. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an S, ends with an N. Sin. The sun. Yeah, we're too much sun. We got sunburn on the brain. No, when I said N, I didn't mean the letter N. I meant I-N, the last 2 letters. Sin has twisted us. We were created, and God looked at us and said, oh boy, that's good stuff right there. All right? And then because of our sin, we are twisted away from him, running in the opposite direction. We don't want to know about him. How many of you, before you became a believer, just woke up one day and says, boy, I want to dig into that Bible. I want to know everything there is about God? I never did. Listen, until the final moment, I was trying to get away. I had my hand on the knob. If that door had opened, I was gone. But at the last second, God did his thing. You do not, and it tells you in this book, the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit. Now, because of our sin and because of our twistedness and our brokenness and the fact that we are infected and debilitated beyond what we can even understand. We can't even understand how messed up we are. And we sit in the church and say, hey, I'm born again, praise the Lord. Yeah, but you still don't know how messed up you are. You still don't know how amazing grace is. We'll sing it, but we don't really know. I've said this in here before, and I honestly think the reason we have such, I want to say an easy time, what do I want to say? We have such a tendency to revert back or to commit sin that if we think about it and stop that, we should die like that first time we commit a sin. the reason we are so, I can't even say immune to that knowledge, but the reason it's so easy for us, is the only other way I can put it, is because the only two people that ever knew what was actually lost was Adam and Eve. They stood in his presence. They walked with God. He talked with them. They, imagine when Kenneth prayed, he said something about, coming boldly before the throne of grace that God invites us to, but we have to do that. But there's still this, it's not a barrier, but there's still a distance there. There's still we still need grace to get to the throne of grace. God says, hey, you come boldly before me, but the only reason we can even do that is because of what he did for us. Yes?
At present, we need an intercessor. After, we will not need an intercessor.
Yeah, he will be in, well, there's a whole lot more that goes into that, but you're exactly right. We'll be in his presence as well. So what he's saying here is, you cannot know because of sin and because of infinite God and finite mind. Yes, sir.
But then again, my statement before still applies, because as believers, we can know something, but until we apply it in our own lives, it does nothing for us.
Well, we're going to talk about here in this next verse. Well, hopefully we'll get you. So, nobody here can know what they will eventually one day know. Nobody here operates outside of the separation. There's a spiritual veil, if you will. The most holy place and the holy place and where God is and as far as man can go and so on and so forth. There's still a little bit of a separation for believers. But look at verse 3. This sounds weird. Okay, this is why it came across as kind of a puzzle. Because we're talking about food offered to idols. We're talking about knowledge that puffs up. We're talking about if you think you know, you don't know what you think you know. And look at verse 3. But if anyone loves God. Wait a minute. Thank you. How we just get from knowing and what we don't know and how we can't know to, but if anyone loves God. How does that happen? It seems like, is that a mistake? Did he mean to say know God, or did he mean to say love God? He absolutely meant to say love God, because look at what it says after that. If anyone loves God, he is known by God. Is that clicking with anybody?
Even though, we don't know everything about it, we can't know everything about it. In spite of that, if we're still reaching out and accepting God's invitation, then God is responding in kind.
Okay. Well, now, go back to is it verse 1 or verse 2, where it says, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. This knowledge that we think we have, this knowledge that we think, okay, I'm gonna try to prove a point here. Hold on. Paul. And y'all know, if I'm thinking about this, I don't know y'all's name. So, yeah, I hadn't called anybody the wrong one yet. Okay, Paul's my buddy. He's a Cub fan. I'm a Cub fan. We've got like a psychic connection. It's like the first time he came.
Just like that. If you think you know, you don't really.
Well, still, we know a little something. So who's your favorite Cub player ever? Okay, Brian or Rizzo. Okay, so we'll go with Chris Bryant because you said him twice. What award did he win? And what about his rookie year? Rookie of the year and MVP. What's he doing now? Enjoying the scenery in Colorado? Yeah. Yep. He heard himself. Young guy was going to be the next big deal. Won MVP a year after won Rookie of the Year. Threw that last out to win the World Series. Bryant and Rizzo. Now I know why. Bryant threw it to Rizzo. Yeah. And now I heard somebody, when he said that, somebody said, "Who?" Okay. Well, you need to pay more attention. You live in the house with that guy. So, but anyway, the thing about it is as much as he knows about Chris Bryant, if he ever met him on the street, Chris Bryant would look at him and go, "Dude, I don't know you." He knows, what was his batting average when he won MVP? You got that one memorized? You know, yeah, I'm getting old too. So, but he knows all that stuff. Or go to basketball. Everybody wants to argue Jordan or LeBron. Well, Jordan had this, and this. But if you ever walk up to Michael Jordan and try to shake his hand, his bodyguards are going to kick you through the wall because he don't know you. You don't know God simply because you have a lot of facts. You don't know God simply because you believe in a 6-day creation. You don't know God simply because you believe in a virgin birth of Jesus Christ. You don't know God simply because I used to work with a guy, I probably told you guys this. I used to work with a guy who had a photographic memory. He had the whole Bible memorized, along with other books. And he used to love, there was me and 2 other guys. We were always talking, and we're always talking about the Bible, we're talking about Christ. All 3 of us were Christians. And he'd run up in the middle of us if he saw us, and he'd look at us and say, "Quote Ezekiel 1:17 for me." And when we go, "I don't know what that is," "And you call yourself a Christian." And then he'd turn around and walk off. Well, he did that to me one time. And I said, "Quote John 3:3 for me." He got mad. Turned around and walked off. Because John 3:3 says, unless man's born again, he cannot even see the kingdom of heaven. He knew that. And yet when I asked him about that, he got mad and walked off. He knew the Bible front to back. He even knew the maps. He knew it all. What's he going to say back?
Depart.
I never knew you. You can know everything you can in this world. But if you don't love God, it's not that he doesn't know who you are. It's not that he's not your creator. It's not that he doesn't know everything about you. Another one of the things that Kenneth prayed about was the verse in Hebrews that says that we can hide nothing. We're all laid open and naked before the one with whom we have to do. God knows everything about you. But if you don't love him, he does not know you. Love lifts up. Love lifts up. Knowledge puffs up. So the point he's trying to make here says you want to know about these food sacrificed to idols. And one of the things y'all like to say is we all got knowledge. We all know what's up. And some of us might know more than the other one. Some of us, as we read on, it's going to be some of us know better, some of us don't. And Paul's going to tell us how we deal with that. I'll give you a hint. It's L-O-V-E. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. It's essentially the same thing, but if you love God, then he knows who you are. Now, before you love God, the thing you got to remember, before you love God, remember what we were doing. Remember how fast you're running in the opposite direction. Remember how much you wanted to just slap somebody if they told you about Jesus. I'm just speaking for myself. Remember how the only reason that you was in church is because somebody was just dogging you. Why don't you come to church with me? Come to church with me. Come to church with me. Oh, I'll go. Just leave me alone. All that stuff. You did not want to love him. You have to figure one more thing out. Not only who he is, but what he's done. In the Old Testament, Chris, you got a microphone back there? Say Hesed for me. Say what? No, watch out. He might spit on your back of your head over there. Now say it again. Okay, that word is translated loving kindness or steadfast love. And it's connected to another word that is usually translated faithfulness or truth. In Hebrew, it's or Emmett, and Emmett, like Emmett Smith. Y'all remember Emmett Smith? All the ladies going, who? Emmett. Hesed. I can't say it like he does. Hesed and Emmett. Loving kindness and faithfulness. When you get to the New Testament, it's translated grace and truth. Grace and truth. When you figure out that God loves you, when you figure out that his desire is to take you and do with you exactly what he created you to do and to be, when even though he looks at you and he sees everything you've ever done and he knows every secret, and like we said, you're naked and laid bare before him. He knows it all. Now, when you figure out the fact that in spite of all that, he wants to give you the purpose that your life is here for. And he's faithful and true, because the reality that we're all living in is it's not about money, it's not about jobs, it's not about houses, it's not about getting married, it's not about having kids, it's not about this, it's not about that. It's about the fact that you are created by him for him. We're going to read that very shortly. You're created by him, for him. You exist because he has a purpose for you. And when you recognize, all I deserve is hell and damnation from this God that created me, because I'm running so fast in another direction, because I don't want to hear it, because I got my hand on the door and as soon as this guy shuts up, I'm out of here. Because of all, when you realize that you deserve nothing from God but death and hell and condemnation forever, but then you look at the fact that that's how he feels about you. Loving kindness and faithfulness. He will absolutely take the person who turns to him in response to the love that he gives us. If we reciprocate that love, if we understand that no, we don't deserve it, but he gives it. No, we have no idea what it's going to lead us to, but we're going to follow him. And we surrender to that. His grace and his truth, his loving kindness and his faithfulness. That is who God is. And he will take you in his grace and in his mercy, and he will do the things with you that are his purpose and his will and his plan and what he wants to do with you. So, if you love God, he is going to not only know who you are, but he's going to make you who you're supposed to be. So love builds up. I don't care what you know about God. Do you love God? Man, you can tell me, how long were the nails? How heavy was the beam he had to carry? How many hours before the tomb was open. You can tell me, but do you love him? Love him to the point, now that word is agapeo, agape, however you want to say it. It is that ultimate love that does not hold back. You can be interested in the Lord. You can know things about him, but that is not loving him. Knowledge puffs up. You walk around and I can quote Isaiah 7:4. Well, I can't. But I love God. And he knows me. And he loves me anyway. And he is going in his loving kindness and his faithfulness, his grace and his mercy. He is not only going to know me, but he is going to make me who I'm supposed to be. So when he talks about this, what are you supposed to do with this kind of meat, this kind of food, so on and so forth, he wants them to understand, just because you know the answer does not mean anything unless you love God, because the truth of the matter is you can't love somebody else the way you think you need to love them, because you think you know how to love, but you really don't until you experience God's love. Until you understand and there again, it's hard. Honestly don't believe that we can truly understand the statement I made earlier, where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. I understand what that means, but in just my own life, I have no idea, not just how bad the sin is, but how much the grace that I need. I just don't know. But I can love God and operate in that relationship with him. And I'm going to be able to build others up. I'm not going to get puffed up because I read the Bible and you know what? I looked up a Greek word and here's what it means. You can't do that. Yeah, it's none of that. It's going to be, hey, I looked this word up and guess what? It's for you and me because we both need it. And you're not going to be puffed up. You're going to help to build up. And the thing about it is, if you say, well, if I'm so busy building everybody else up, who's going to build me up? Everybody else. Because they're going to love you back. So this whole room, if you're a born-again believer, your job is to build everybody else up. And while you're doing that, they're supposed to be building you up. And while they're all doing that, the person in the back is supposed to be getting built up by all this. Did y'all know that we're such good builders? We're not. But it's, you ever seen, I used to work at Home Depot for a little while. And on Saturday mornings, they used to have the kids club or whatever they called it, where you come, Dad would bring his little boy, and hey, we're going to build a birdhouse or something, and the guys out there in the orange, they're, well, you need it, it's basically just brainwashing the kid to come to Home Depot in 20 years when you need a drill. But Dad was out there with the kid. The kid thought he was building the Empire State Building. You can see them so excited, and it's like, dude, you could do this in like 30 seconds. But they would spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour putting together this little birdhouse that just goes. But they'd have hammers and they'd have, to them, they were doing the greatest thing. That's what we do. If we're loving God and we're trying to build each other up, that we're the little kid thinking that we're accomplishing something when Dad's standing over the top of us going, here's how it goes. And he's the one doing it. Anyway, what time is it? 7:09. You let me go 9 minutes too long. How dare you? Questions or comments or thoughts? All right, we will continue on because the idea that Paul's going to unveil is this is how you, here's the answer, and this is how you operate in love with it. Now, again, it's not about the idols, it's not about the food, it's about loving the other person. So keep that in mind as we come back next week. Nobody's got anything before we close? All right. Pastor Chris, will you close us in prayer, please, sir?